With the new update to Phasmophobia having been released on August 17th, a lot has changed. So much so that people are nicknaming the update Phasmophobia 2.0, and for good reason. People who are new to the game might not notice many differences at first, but for returning veterans, the game is entirely different. Take the equipment, for example. Instead of having all of the gear unlocked simultaneously and immediately, Phasmophobia centers around a progression system now, in which the player must level up to unlock higher levels of gear. And speaking of leveling up, the whole system has been revamped. Previously, it was 100 XP for every level, regardless of how high level you were. This resulted in people getting to tens of thousands of levels, achieving nearly meaningless stat lines. Now, however, the level cap is level 100, and EXP gains needed to level up become progressively larger the closer you get to level 100. Upon hitting level 100, the player can choose to ascend, or prestige, resetting their level and money back to 0 and starting the grind once more. However, the player can also choose to continue playing the game as is, retaining their money and gear to use however they like. Jumping back to gear, there is a lot to talk about. First of all, each equipment type now has a Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 associated with it, rather than the one-size-fits-all system we had before. And let me tell you, the Tier 1 gear is bad. It's really bad. But it's bad in a good way. It's meant to be bad, and it's meant to be clunky, and the game is conscious about that. You are meant to struggle at first, and be rewarded with unlocking the higher tiers of gear. If the Tier 1 equipment was good, there would be no reason to level up and grind for the better gear. However, with that being said, using the Tier 1 gear can be frustrating, especially for returning players who are expecting to know how the gear works. And that's the purpose of this video, to go over the beginner gear and to give you tips on how to use them effectively. Going in order of the supply list, we start off with the D.O.T.S projector. This is probably the biggest source of debate for most people in the new update. As of August 17th, dots in general have been changed. No longer will you see the ghost randomly run through dots at any given minute. Instead, the ghost must actually pass through the dots projector field and also be in what the developers call a dots phase, during which the ghost can actually be seen in the dots field. To my knowledge, it is a random chance for the ghost to be in dots phase, and to add on to it, the ghost must be in this phase while it is standing within the range of the dots projector, making it even harder and more unreliable. Especially with the Tier 1 pen light, finding dots can be a huge pain. My biggest tip for people using Tier 1 dots is to always buy 2 of them and place them on tables and chairs in a cross pattern. The range of these beams are quite short, only 5 meters, so if you have a large room, it will still be difficult to see, but this allows you to set up a grid of dots without having to stand with the pen light and manually sweep the room waiting for dots to show up. Next up, we have the EMF Reader. This one is fairly self-explanatory. It works very similarly to the EMF Reader we had before. Just be warned that the EMF Reader is not entirely accurate, and for EMF 5 to be a piece of evidence, the needle must pass 5 on the display, not touch it. There are certain scenarios, such as ghost events, that will give off an EMF 4 reading, and on the clunky EMF Reader, it's tempting to mark these off as EMF 5. Just be patient, and maybe try to get more than one source of EMF 5 if you're unsure. Next is the ghostwriting book. Once again, very similar, with the big difference being that the Tier 1 has a much smaller radius for the ghost to interact with, and therefore it might take longer for the ghost to write in it. Fortunately, placing the writing book now shows its active radius, much like placing a crucifix does, and so you'll be able to see if you are adequately covering a room with the books. Again, be patient with this one, you might just be getting unlucky. The Tier 1 Spirit Box is a bit of a nightmare on the ears, and just like the EMF Reader, it is clunky and inaccurate. Because of this, it's best to test multiple times for a response and in different locations of the room. Sometimes I like to test for Spirit Box, set up different equipment, and then return to the Spirit Box again to see if there is still no response. When the small light in the bottom right corner lights up, it means the Spirit Box has received a valid question and the ghost did not respond. However, this does not always mean Spirit Box is not a piece of evidence, so keep testing. The Tier 1 thermometer is essentially an old house thermometer that you ripped off your grandma's wall and brought to a paranormal investigation. In this new update, freezing breath no longer indicates freezing temperatures, and so a thermometer will need to be used to determine if the room is actually freezing. This thermometer takes quite a while to get an accurate reading, and freezing temperatures typically take a while to show up in general. Therefore, this is usually one of the first pieces of equipment I bring in, and one of the last that I check to ensure it has time to get an accurate reading. The Tier 1 UV light is the old glow stick that we all know and love, and very little has changed about it specifically. However, fingerprints and footprints have changed a little bit, and now are called ultraviolet in the journal. This is due to the fact that ghosts will no longer leave behind footsteps after stepping in a salt pile unless they have ultraviolet as a piece of evidence. Fingerprints and footsteps can now also be charged up to be seen even after the UV light has been removed, making taking photos of them easier. Just be mindful that it does take quite a while to charge the fingerprints, and taking a photo of them too early might result in a photo that does not recognize anything. Our last piece of evidence-related gear is the video camera, and the Tier 1 of this is really bad. Imagine taking a camcorder from the 80s, finding it 40 years later using the same batteries, throwing it down the stairs multiple times, and then rinsing it off while the camera was still on and open. That would probably get you the Tier 2 version, not even the Tier 1. It's really bad. The night vision is very difficult to see with, and so spotting a ghost orb can be a bit difficult. In my experience, the ghost orb seems to move around a bit more, making the movement of them easier to spot, but check multiple times during an investigation for a ghost orb. I've been burned plenty of times by missing a sneaky ghost orb. With all of the evidence equipment out of the way, that brings us to the consumables, which I'll try and do as fast and as detailed as I can. Starting off the list, we have the crucifix. This crucifix only has one charge each, meaning only 2 hunts can be prevented during an investigation, in contrast to the 4 that we could prevent prior. Be mindful how long you spend in the dark. Candles are now no longer infinite, and the Tier 1 candle now lasts only 3 minutes once lit. You can extinguish them and relight them to extend their lifespan, but you will now actively see the candle becoming shorter the longer you have it lit. In addition, the candle will no longer fully prevent sanity loss, instead just offering a 33% reduction in the case of the Tier 1. You can bring 4 of these to an investigation. The Tier 1 flashlight is what you would expect, a flashlight. However, with the new Ascension update, the lighting engine has been changed a bit, resulting in dark areas being super, super dark. And the tier 1 flashlight is super, super bad. Fortunately, you unlock the tier 2, what we know as the strong flashlight, at level 19. So if you can hold out until then, you'll at least be able to see your hands in front of you in the dark. 4 of them fit on the rack in the van, so make sure to always grab one at the beginning of an investigation. Next up, we have the Headcam. It's a multiplayer item, and it does the exact same thing it always did. Offers a mobile camera view for people in the van to watch. Be mindful that it is considered electronic equipment, and therefore the ghost will be able to detect it during a hunt. Make sure to turn the camera off during a hunt. There should be a keybind in the controls. You can pack 4 of these into the van, 1 for each player. In order to light the new candles we now have matches instead of lighters. These matches can be used as a very small light source, similar to how the lighters work, but they only last for 10 seconds, and you only get 10 of them per pack. However, with being able to bring 4 packs to an investigation, you shouldn't really ever run out of these. The tier 1 smudge sticks are now called Incense, but they work exactly like they did before. You can blind the ghost during a hunt, or smudge the room it is in to cause various different effects, depending on the type of ghost you're dealing with. Just make sure to have the matches to light them. You can bring 4 of these to an investigation. The tier 1 motion sensors are actually a nice upgrade to the motion sensors we had before. Now, when you place them, they show a small infrared beam to tell you the actual distance they cover, and when triggered, they no longer give off a blinding light for way too long, but will instead give a dim glow that fades as soon as the ghost leaves the sensor. You can use 4 of these in an investigation to monitor the path a ghost walks. The new Parabolic Mic is a much needed upgrade to the old one. The tier 1 mic does not offer a display screen showing audio levels, but there's almost no need to. This has quickly become one of my new favorite pieces of equipment, and it makes finding the ghost room incredibly easy. The game claims that it only has a 20-meter range, but I have found that you can easily pick up ghost whispers and sounds from across the house with it. When loading into an investigation, I highly recommend using one of these as you explore. It will help you narrow down the direction of the ghost room quickly. You can bring 2 of these into an investigation. Our new tier 1 camera is a good old-fashioned Polaroid camera, and I love it. Not much to say about this other than it has a rather long time between taking pictures, so if you have multiple events happening in a short period of time, be mindful that you might struggle to take pictures of all of them. You can have 3 cameras with you on an investigation. The new tier 1 of salt is the exact same, except this salt only has 2 charges in it rather than 3. And remember, be mindful that ghosts only leave green footprints after stepping in salt if they have ultraviolet as a piece of evidence. You can bring 3 salt canisters with you into an investigation. The tier 1 Sanity Medication is an old-timey bottle of insane away, and it works just like the pills did with one minor difference. These medications, as well as the tier 2 sanity pills and perhaps the tier 3, though I haven't tested them, restore sanity over time rather than being instant. So don't be alarmed if you use some in the van and you check your sanity only to see it unchanged. You can have 4 sanity medications available to you in an investigation. The tier 1 of the sound sensor is the same as it was previously. I honestly never used them, so I have no idea how they worked previously, but now you can expand or shrink the radius of them in the truck, so that's cool, I think. You can have 4 sound sensors in an investigation. Finally, we have the tripod for the video camera. Ghosts can now interact with and throw video cameras if left on the ground or a table, so placing them on surfaces is no longer as reliable as it once was. However, when placed on a tripod, the ghost will have a harder time of knocking it down, though be mindful that it still can. Another thing to keep in mind is that the tripod now has an actual hitbox and will slow you down if you try and run through it. Keep this in mind, as you might not want to block your escape path with a tripod in the event of a hunt. You can bring 4 tripods to an investigation, 1 per video camera available. And that's it for the equipment breakdown. Hopefully you learned something new, or you have a better understanding of how to use this equipment during an investigation, and hopefully I have helped reduce significant frustration with the Tier 1 items. Let me know what you guys think of the new Phasmophobia update, and I'll see you all in the next video. Thanks, everybody.